"I'll pay you, so just settle this," she said. "How much do you want?" As soon as she entered the hospital room, I was momentarily stunned by her unbelievable statement. "What did you say, Catherine? What did you just say?" "I meant exactly what I said." "What do you mean? Answer me." One wrong step, and it would have been a big deal, this terrible thing she did to us. After pulling that stunt and then offering us money to settle, how far does she have to go in belittling me, no, us, before she's satisfied? I have no intention of complying with such nonsense. Catherine, you will take full responsibility. What did you say? You're just as cheeky as ever. Don't make us angry. You have no idea what we'll do if you make us angry. I barely held back my unbearable anger and engaged in a verbal battle with these shameless so-called friends, Catherine and her husband. "I've heard everything." My husband joined in the fight, cutting in sharply. Both Catherine and her husband were taken aback by my husband's menacing expression, something I had never seen before. "Catherine, you really haven't changed at all since high school. You always think everything can be solved with money. What's wrong with that? Everyone wants money, don't they?" "Yeah, exactly. That's how the world works. If we give her money, she won't complain." My husband pointed his finger at the arrogant couple and retorted, "Shall we test if money really can solve everything?" The couple was silenced by this declaration but left the hospital room, leaving a parting shot behind. It's true that everyone wants money, as Catherine said. Money is like magic that literally transforms fun and happiness, a unique magic in this world. However, as my husband said, there are things that money can't buy and can't solve. Catherine will be forced to recognize this fact, along with the reality that she tried to take my life and the life within me so casually. My name is Sarah Smith. I'm 32 years old and 9 months pregnant. I have a husband of the same age, Bob, who is also looking forward to the birth of our child. We would like to welcome the birth of our child with peace of mind, but reality won't let us. That's because there's someone who disapproves of our child's birth. It's one of my so-called friends, Catherine, who has been a nuisance since high school. Catherine's family owns a major resort company, and she's quite rich. She's beautiful and excels in both academics and sports, making her a celebrity in high school. However, having been spoiled by her parents since childhood, she grew up to be incredibly selfish and attention-seeking. Because of her personality and upbringing, she became infamous for using money to get whatever she wanted. During this time, Catherine targeted Bob and repeatedly demanded that he become her lover by aggressively confessing and dangling money. Bob was fed up with Catherine and chose me over her because he had always had pure feelings for me. But this made the future more challenging, and I became her enemy. "You don't deserve Bob, Sarah. You're just an ordinary person. Give him to me, right now." "What?" "But Catherine, I'm prettier than you, Sarah. And I have money. Catherine, can you please stop this?" In this way, my husband and I endured verbal and financial harassment from Catherine throughout high school. We consulted teachers many times, but they were all silenced by Catherine's money. Until Catherine graduated, my husband and I tried not to provoke her and avoided her as much as possible. After she graduated, we didn't know what happened to her, but she stopped bothering us. We thought she had finally given up. But we never dreamed that this past would have a significant impact on the current situation. A few years later, Sarah and I, thinking we'd never meet Catherine again, were surprised when she suddenly appeared before us. "Oh, isn't that Sarah and Bob? I haven't seen you in a while. Even though you guys are as poor as church mice, you seem to have made a decent home." Catherine had also gotten married and, like us, had a family with a husband and kids. However, she still seemed to flaunt her wealth, with her husband, Richard, and her son and daughter dressed in flashy, expensive designer clothes and bags. They drove around in posh cars. On top of that, just like in high school, she'd flaunt wads of cash in front of her friends and offer it to them as spending money. While most of these friends refused, some were blinded by the money and accepted it, becoming beholden to Catherine. Catherine used these paid-off friends to annoy Bob and me. Sarah, you always dress so plain. Can't you afford better clothes since back in the day? Don't walk proudly in front of me. Maybe that alley is more suited for your walks. This cafe isn't for poor folks like you and Bob. I'll give you some cash. Why don't you go to a nearby diner for lunch? She always nitpicked our attire and actions, and kept flashing her money just like in high school. You shouldn't engage with folks like her, it only amuses and emboldens them. So, let her rant until she's tired. At first, I was tempted to retort, when will she ever get tired, but I held back. Just as Bob said, you can see that such people will escalate their antics when given attention. So together with Bob, we decided to mostly ignore Catherine's provocations. One day, I became pregnant. When we found out, Bob was genuinely thrilled and said, now I gotta step up and not be an embarrassment as a father. Strengthened by his determination, I also felt the resolve to live a life without regrets as a mother, for our unborn child. We only hoped Catherine would leave us alone, but life wasn't so kind. One day, 9 months into my pregnancy, I ran into Catherine while returning from shopping. Oh, Sarah, you've put on quite some weight. What have you been eating to look like that? It's not weight. I'm pregnant. If you've nothing to say, please leave me alone. But Catherine, irked by the response, confronted me. Not just your belly, even your attitude's gotten big. How dare a plain Jane like you get pregnant? What you think doesn't matter to me. I just want a peaceful delivery. I tried to calmly leave, but Catherine became even more agitated. Hold on, Sarah. Getting cheeky, aren't you? Catherine yelled, trying to grab me from behind. In the struggle, Catherine's arm accidentally struck my belly, causing me to fall hard. In pain, I crumpled to the ground. It hurts. Someone, help. Barely conscious, I managed to call Bob using my cell phone. I informed him that the baby was in danger before passing out. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed with an 4 in my arm and covered in a warm electric blanket. Mrs. Smith, I'm so glad you woke up, a familiar voice said. When I looked, I saw my close friends, Mary and Jane, by her side. What happened? The baby. Now, Mrs. Smith, you mustn't exert yourself, Mary cautioned. I tried to sit up but was struck by pain in my abdomen. Mary and Jane gently helped me lie down. But Sarah noticed her previously large belly was now smaller, and she was devastated. I asked the nurse I had called with the nurse call what had happened, and it seemed that I had gone into labor as it was and had given birth by emergency C-section. The baby I had given birth to was still small and in an incubator, but very lively, and there was nothing wrong with its life. My husband, who had rushed over from work after hearing my phone call, was said to have turned bright red with anger after hearing an explanation from Mary and Jane, who had happened to pass by and called the emergency, and from my attending physician. Anyway, I decided to go see the baby once I felt better, following the advice of Mary and Jane. I tried to sleep as much as possible to recover quickly. However, the next day, an incredible couple came to my hospital room. It was Catherine and Richard, the ones who sent me to the hospital. You! Mr. Miller! How dare you show up like this? I'll ask you just in case, but what on earth have you come here for? Mary and Jane, who had come to visit me, stared at the two with stern eyes, but the two ignored them and came closer to my bed. After doing that to me, and entering the room without even a greeting or a knock, I had to frown at what was so well described as shameless. And then, that uncivilized couple suddenly threw these unbelievable words at me. I'll get right to the point. How much do you want? What? We'll pay you, so let's settle this. How much do you want? My head went blank and I got the chills. What did you say? Catherine, what did you just say? It means exactly what I said, you know? So what do you mean, I'm asking? Answer me. To think that you would do such a thing to the child in my belly and say that you'll pay me to settle. How much more do you have to insult me, or rather us, before you're satisfied? I have no intention of agreeing to such a ridiculous proposal. I will hold you, Catherine, responsible as appropriate." I clearly refused, and Catherine and Richard spewed out all the abusive language they could think of. "What did you say? You're as cheeky as ever. Don't anger us too much. You don't know what will happen if you do. You're not being cheeky at all. Could you please stop messing around and making fun of us?" "That's right, Catherine. Do you even realize what you did? If you had made one wrong step, it could have been serious. She really had a baby in her belly. And Catherine, you carelessly put both Sarah and the baby in danger." "Huh? What are you talking about? We're trying to settle this with money. Aren't you grateful? You people know your place. Didn't your parents teach you anything? We're saying let's settle us. Agree to the settlement before you make a big deal out of it by making us angry." Jane and Mary joined in with my words, and when they spoke out with force, Catherine and Richard raged back at them, not only at me but also at Jane and Mary. As we were arguing loudly, forgetting that we were in a hospital room, the door suddenly opened with a loud noise. "I've heard all the talk. Sorry, but I have no intention of settling at all." The one who cut in with a calm but menacing voice was my husband. Mary and Jane looked back at my husband in surprise. Catherine and Richard had not expected my husband to come, and before his first ever truly angry expression, they suddenly became intimidated. Honestly, I too had never seen my husband truly angry, so both Mary and Jane, along with me, were taken aback. My husband walked up to Catherine and Richard and said calmly but vigorously, "Catherine, you really haven't changed since high school. You always think you can solve anything with money. What did you say? What's wrong with that? Everyone wants money, don't they?" Catherine recoiled at being bluntly told off. Money is indeed something that everyone wants, no matter the era. But there are things that money can't buy, and problems it can't solve. I won't deny that. This was exactly the case now, and no matter how much money they offered, I couldn't forgive them. I was thankful that my daughter, who was in the incubator, was alive and well, but had one step gone wrong, she might not have been in this world. Catherine didn't understand this at all. Richard, who was standing next to her, was probably of the same mind. That made it all the more impossible for me to forgive them, and I didn't want to hear the word settlement so easily. "I'm with Bob on this. If it's a problem that can be solved with money, we don't need the police. So I'll say it again. Get out, and take responsibility." "What? You're more insolent than ever today. Anyone would be happy if they could get their hands on some money, wouldn't they?" "Yeah, exactly. That's just how the world works. This woman wouldn't complain either if she got some money." After this, Catherine and Richard became more aggressive, hurling insults. The two of them flaunted their shallow personalities so openly that I no longer had the energy to get angry. Then, at that moment, my husband forcefully pointed at Catherine and Richard and declared, "Then, let's really test if money can solve everything." "What?" At my husband's meaningful retort, Catherine and Richard were taken aback. I was also taken aback, but Catherine glanced back at Bob, her face mocking along with Richard. "What do you mean, test it? Are you stupid? What can poor people like you and Sarah possibly do?" Catherine spat out those words and left the hospital room with Richard. "Bob, what are you planning to do?" "Sarah, don't worry. Leave everything to me," Bob said, and somehow winked at Mary and Jane. Mary and Jane also nodded and reassured me, saying, "It's all right." I didn't understand what was going on, but I had just finished surgery and was not fully recovered, so arguing or talking further would have been too painful. So I decided to trust my husband for now and rest my body. The next evening, Catherine burst into the hospital. Literally, in a frenzy. "Come on, you're in there, aren't you? I know it's your doing. Stop lying around and come out, you timid woman." Outside the hospital room, Catherine was arguing with the nurses, yelling incoherently. During this commotion, my husband, who had come to visit after work, saw the ruckus outside the hospital room and calmly said, "Hey, what are you doing now? Showing up at the hospital and making a scene like this. Are you okay in the head? Catherine then shifted her anger to my husband and yelled at him. The disturbance at our house yesterday, it was definitely you and Sarah's doing. To bring the police and a lawyer into a mere quarrel between friends, what are you thinking? Mere quarrel? You should save your nonsense for when you're asleep. That's the most fitting and effective way to deal with a crazy woman like you, right? What did you say? Save your excuses for the police station. Any more and you'll be bothering the other patients. While being rebuffed by Bob, Catherine continued to scream and tried to approach my hospital room. However, she was restrained by security guards who seemed to have rushed over, and her voice gradually faded away. Then I heard a siren from outside, followed by more shouting, and realized that Catherine must have been picked up by a patrol car that Bob or the hospital had called. That night, Richard unexpectedly called. I'm divorcing that woman, and I won't get involved with you anymore. So don't drag me into this mess any further. He called out of the blue, saying something incomprehensible. A self-centered talk. If your wife is like that, then you're no better as a husband. I'll hear the details later, but please stop bothering me with your incomprehensible and selfish demands. After that, I think Richard shouted something over the phone, but I hung up without paying attention. Of course, I didn't forget to block his number, and finally surrendered to the quiet rest that had arrived. I later learned that Mary's husband works at the police station, and Jane's husband is a newspaper reporter. They're friends with my husband and get along well enough to keep in touch. After the incident with Catherine and Richard at the hospital, my husband immediately sought their cooperation, and his friends agreed. Moreover, Mary and Jane, who were fed up with Catherine, came forward and offered to help in avenging me. First, with the cooperation of Mary's husband, a police officer, my husband filed a complaint against Catherine for assault and obstruction, leading to her arrest. Afterwards, a meeting was arranged through Jane, a lawyer, but Catherine stubbornly insisted that she had done nothing wrong. In response, Mary produced a recording of the conversation in the hospital room as evidence. Furthermore, there were eyewitness testimonies from Mary and Jane who were present at the scene of the assault, so Catherine was found guilty, and it was decided that she had to pay a large amount of compensation. After that, Jane's husband reported to the newspaper company, and with the incident being reported in the newspapers, not only Catherine but also her family suffered a major blow. Moreover, Catherine's parents seemed to have embezzled company funds to cover up her wrongdoing, and the company's reputation plummeted, leading to a rapid deterioration in business. Richard had been freely acting within the company using Catherine's money, but his colleagues did not think highly of him. Later, word spread about Richard's behavior, and he became isolated within the company. The situation worsened, and Richard was ordered to transfer to a rural area by the HR department. Afterward, Richard resigned from the company and was seen boarding a plane bound for Nebraska, but his whereabouts since then are unknown. Meanwhile, Catherine's divorce from Richard was finalized, and along with losing support from her parents and having to pay compensation, she ended up with significant debt. The children were taken away, and she faced a difficult situation. Now, she is said to be living as a homeless person in a park somewhere, surviving in line for volunteer soup kitchens. According to Mary and Jane, they witnessed her there. A few months after the incident, I was discharged from the hospital safely with my newborn daughter, and was able to receive a large amount of compensation. My daughter is healthy without any lingering effects, and she is growing well. My husband and I are enjoying a peaceful life, watching over our daughter's growth and cherishing our friendship with Mary and Jane. The impact of the incident was severe, but it seems that a calm life has returned.